do you want it? And are you willing to commit? Are you willing to do the scary thing? Are you willing to do the thing you don't think you can do and do it with all of your heart? Hey there, bold ones. Welcome to another episode of Act Bold. Today, this is going to be the mega episode on networking. I have Reena Friedman Watts on. She is honestly the best networker I have ever met in my life. She's hooked me up with numerous people, and she's going to give us some tips for networking in a way that feels authentic and works for you no matter how you work. So right now, Reena is also the podcast producer for the OGGN network. They have over 21 different shows in their podcast network. And Reena is also the founder and podcaster of Better Call Daddy. And that's how we met. I was on her show quite some time ago. And I've always wanted to get her onto Act Bold because of her networking skills. And the woman never ceases to amaze me as far as how good they are. And they just keeps, it's like the gift that doesn't stop giving. So Reena, with that, welcome to the show. So good to finally be able to get you on. And I'm so thrilled to be able to really ask you the questions, because networking is one of those things. It's really, a lot of people feel really uncomfortable with networking. Why do you think that is?
That's a great question. There's a lot of introverts out there.
Yeah.
And I even recently asked my audience, how can you show up with confidence to a trade show, for example? And I think it's little things like how you sit, how you carry yourself, how you smile. There is an element of fake it till you make it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I've gone to
Absolutely.
events and not been in the best mood. How do you snap out of that? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I always do? I always say I'm an extroverted introvert. So I'm not naturally, gregarious and one of those people that goes up to everybody. But I will sometimes just who is the most nervous looking person in the room? Ah, that guy over there. I'm going to go over there and introduce myself, right? Because then you're not alone anymore and they're happy too. So that's kind of like one of my tips. But there's so much more to it. And I think beyond people feeling insecure and shy, I think a lot of people really have the wrong idea about what networking is. You
oh,
know,
that's another really good point. I'll tell you, I was just in an event this week and a guy put on his name badge, asked me about pro wrestling. And I was like, dude, that is such a good
brilliant.
icebreaker
Yeah.
and so brilliant. And I've gone to other events in town where instead of name tag, it says purpose tag. If you lead with your
Oh,
why, or if you lead with what people remember
yes.
about you, or something that's like different about you that's not industry focused or job focused, people are curious about that and they'll remember you for that. I went instantly up to that guy and I was like, I know a pro wrestler. I'm like, who's your favorite wrestler? Tell me about pro wrestling, right?
Yeah, right. Oh, absolutely. And I bet he just lit up, you
And then I'm
know?
like, have you ever pretended like you're announcing yourself into the ring? I wanna see you do that. Yeah,
Did he do it?
he did it. It was so gold.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
There was a conversation I was having. She was my very first podcast guest. She's a major casting director. She cast Skyfall, Scepter, the Millennium Trilogy, Califat. So, I mean, like major, major, major films and TV series and all of that. So I was a little nervous in the beginning of it, but then at the very end, I had sort of warmed up and realized she's not going to, whatever, blackball me if I ask a stupid question or whatever. I just started being myself, and then that was all fine. But one of the last questions I asked her was, I said, so, Tessa, if we were to meet each other, like standing in line at the grocery store, and we weren't like what we do for a living, and I asked you, what lights you up? What would you say? And all of a sudden, literally, she's like, I am an expert at mushrooms. And she's like, she belongs to all these different mushroom groups and they go mushroom foraging. And people are always sending her mushroom pictures about, is this poisonous? Can I eat this or am I going to die? And it was amazing. And it led to this really beautiful conversation where for the first time, I think in the entire hour, we were actually at eye level. We were like having a conversation like two human beings and not just me asking typical rote questions, I'm sure, that a lot of, especially since it was my very first podcast interview, the typical rote questions that an actor asks of a casting director.
I love that story, and a lot of times at the end of interviews too, I'll be like, "Is there anything that I didn't ask you? Like, if there's something that you wanna tell me that you're into?"
Mm.
And I did that, and this guy was like, "Actually, I just moved to Texas also 9 months ago." He's like, "I'm from Columbia, I've lived in Oklahoma, then to Nashville," and he's like, "Since I've been in Houston, I've gotten into rock climbing, and I've gotten into barbecue and martial arts," and he also, like, really lit up from kind of being able to take over the conversation, and he was a podcaster too, so it was like he knows how to start a conversation. It's just ask people what they're into, and a lot of times the conversation will go somewhere where you just completely didn't expect.
Totally, totally. Do you know, oh, the comedian, the really sardonic David Sedaris? David Sedaris, do you know him?
I don't. I've
The
heard the name.
he's a really sarcastic and kinda, like, sardonic, comedian, and he also, I think, has written a couple of books. I know one book for sure, "Me Talk Pretty Someday," I think is the name of the book. Anyway, he's has these off the wall ways of seeing things, and he's really an interesting guy, and he'll just go up to people. I don't know why he asked this. He'll be like, "When was the last time you touched a monkey?" And then he said, and this woman turned around and all of a sudden was like, "Actually, this morning I have a pet monkey." And then they started this whole conversation around it. But I mean, yeah, it's an off the wall question for sure. And I think he just went with his gut. I don't think this is like a standard question for him. But sometimes why not? Maybe you're getting some sort of an intuition from the universe or something. Ask this woman, when was the last time she touched a monkey? So tell me, what is one myth about networking that what do you think people get wrong about networking?
Oh, man. I think one thing that people get wrong is maybe overstaying their welcome.
Ooh, okay. So do you like have any tips for what are some good signs? I mean, some people just don't know how to read the room. I agree.
Yeah, it's like you don't wanna be the last one at the party, and I'm giving myself advice here because 'cause I'm such a talker that my husband's really good at being like,
Let's
"It's time
go.
to go." You and if somebody says like, "Oh, that's really awesome," or, like, there are signs that people give you that they're done.
Yeah.
So I think in a first meeting, like, tell a couple good stories, work the room, don't overstay your welcome. I think that takes a little bit of art.
Yeah. You know what I always find super awkward is like I'll see someone I know and they're talking with some other people. I mean, I do have my thing now for that, right? So I'll usually go up to that person and say, "Hey, I just want to say I saw you. I don't want to interrupt. And I'd love to talk to you later when you have a minute." Right. And that's what I do. And then if it's no big deal, they'll be like, "No, come on. You can." Hey. But I know, like, especially at film festivals, is if you see an agent, you see a casting director, a director, a showrunner, whatever it is, right? And there are always actors swarming, and I don't want to be one of those swarming actors. And I know that this is how a lot of actors feel. And what I find, like with my clients, like one of the things that comes up again and again is that I think so many people think that networking is icky because it's transactional. It's like me wanting something from you. And what I'm always trying to tell my clients is like, no, lead with what you can do for them. And honestly, like, you are a perfect example of that. You're not an actor, right? So I really loved our conversation, but I was like, I'm not sure how to bring you on to the show and da da da. And and you just kept giving and hooking me up with these amazing people within the industry. Like
Anytime
Tom.
I see the word actor or anything associated with that, I think of you now. And, today I had a phone call with Oliver. He's one of the founders of the Headliner app. I love the
Mm,
tools that they make. I
mm,
use
I'm
their
not familiar with it.
audiograms.
Okay.
Um, I subscribe to their newsletter. I read very few newsletters. In fact, unsubscribe from more than I subscribe to. But there are so many useful things in there. So I just periodically give them feedback and check in with them and say, "Hey, if you're ever like creating a new tool and you want to test it out on a podcast, I'd love to be your guinea pig."
I
Literally.
love it. Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
and this
Yeah.
led to multiple campaigns with Headliner for me doing that. And so today I was like, "Hey, I noticed you just released a new tool where, you guys are getting into the video clipping thing." And then he was like, "Yeah, do you use any other apps that do that? And what do you like about them? What do you not like about them? What would you like to see with the one we're doing?" And we had a whole conversation about that. And then at the
Wow.
end of the conversation, he was like, "Hey, what type of guests are you looking for on both of the shows that you're working on? And would you ever be interested in me putting that in my newsletter?" And last time I did that for somebody, they got like 500 responses. How can we really niche it down to people that would be useful for you? I was like, "Oh my God, that is so nice of you." And I was
Amazing.
like, "Here's
Yeah.
what I can do. I can't
Yeah.
guarantee that I will have all 500 of those people on, but what I will guarantee you is I will respond to every single person that fills out the little form that you put on your newsletter."
Amazing. Yeah, and I know you will,
I
just from what I
will.
know about you. Yeah, I know you will. And that's yeah, that but it goes to show because you always lead with value. And I think I think that that is honestly the secret to networking well. It's like you show up and it's like, what can I this I would love this, but what could I do for you? How could we make this work? What and even if it's not, I don't know if you've ever asked me that question directly, what can I do for you? But you have done for me many, many, many times in the what year that we've known each other. And it's something where, like when I've spoken about you with Tom Vaughn, right, who you connected me with Tom Vaughn, the screenwriter. And he was also saying, you're an amazing networker. So do you think this is just like a quality that you were born with, or do you think this is something you learned how to do, or maybe a little of both?
I think it's a little bit of both. Even today, I caught up with a girlfriend who I knew from my days in California. So I moved. I'll give you just a quick and dirty of my career. So I worked for a radio station in college. Then from an NPR station, I interviewed at WGN in Chicago. I didn't get the job, but I saw Jerry Springer was looking for interns.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah.
I walked over from WGN to NBC Tower, got through security, and started there 2 weeks later. And from Jerry Springer, I ended up moving to LA and kind of working in reality TV at the beginning of that. And it was amazing in my 20s just to bounce from show
I'm
to
sure.
show
Yeah.
and kind of figure out like what you like doing, what you don't like doing. I was a script supervisor, an assistant editor, a post-production supervisor. I mean, you name it, I tried it. And then I met my husband online, on a Jewish dating site, like my 3rd season of Nanny 911, when I was a post-production supervisor, really, like it's very similar to the job I'm getting ready to take, actually. So, I
Wow.
supervised the voiceover sessions, I made sure all the executives got the tapes in the formats that they wanted, I made sure that the editors were where they were supposed to be, and that everything was really ready for broadcast. So I did that for 3 seasons from the pilot of the show until the 3rd season, and it was amazing. It was an amazing time. Then met my husband online, moved to Silicon Valley, joined the Producers Guild just to, like, still get the screeners and get to see movies before they came out and just to be connected with different creatives because a part of me feels like I need that in my life. Like, I went to a youth
Yeah.
performing arts school, and, like, those are my people.
Yeah.
And so I connected with this girl who was putting on a meetup, and she had Craig, the founder of Craigslist there, and she had Gavin Newsom, and she
Oh,
just was putting
wow.
on this amazing event. She shot a video of me, and I was reflecting on from moving from LA to Palo Alto, like moving from LA, which is totally entertainment based, to like Palo Alto, which is like nerdy, Ivy League, hyper intellectual type. She was like, wanted to know about the differences in those chapters for me. And she ended up moving back to Korea to take care of her father. And we kept in touch. Like, it was crazy. And so I just caught up with her today, and she was telling me that she's writing a sitcom. She's so talented, like, as far as her cinematography work and her editing work. And she's just, I love her. I love her soul. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta connect you to a screenwriter because she was saying that,
And
like,
an
she needs help
actor.
with character development. Yes, and then
Right.
I told her the
Oh,
story
for
of Tom
sure.
Vaughn and how we
Yeah.
met and how not only does he teach screenwriting, but he's sold screenplays, and
Yeah,
I
he
know they're
did
gonna
that
love each other.
absolutely with Helen Mirren. I mean, he's done some, like, big time stuff. Yeah, amazing.
I
Yeah,
love how you got a completely different side of Tom than I did, and that's another thing I wanted to mention about networking is that, you know, we can have things in common, but we can also have a totally different experience with the people that we have in common. And like when I interviewed Jerry Springer and also when I just interviewed Hunter Biden's ex, I'm like, what can I find that only I have in common with them? So, Jerry, we worked on a show at a time in life that not too many people went through those things together. So,
yeah.
when I connected with him, I led with that. I was like, oh my God, do you remember what it was like working on the show pre 9/11?
Did he remember you as an
And
intern?
exactly, I asked my audience, I was like, what should I ask Jerry? And they were like, does he remember you? I actually asked him that. He was like, "Of course I remember you. You were a kid." He was like, "Look at you now." He was it was so everybody wants to know, "Do you remember me?" Right?
Yeah.
And what do you
Yeah,
remember about me? That's
right.
actually a really interesting question to ask people that you shared a slice of life with.
Yeah.
I'm gonna interview somebody that knew my dad since 6th grade. I'm like, "What was my dad like in 6th grade?" And they've kept in touch, this guy, for generations. So if you can even
Wow.
just get a taste of what, they experienced with your father or what they experienced
And
with
such
you
a
in
small
LA.
world, no? Yeah. Things come full circle. I just interviewed
Yeah,
this couple who runs Get Taped out of Atlanta, and they also have a YouTube channel for Get Taped and all that. Really nice couple. They also run the Sam Christensen branding program. So Sam Christensen was got very famous for helping actors to find their actor brand. But the thing was, turned out Sam Christensen had come, was he's dead now, but had gone to Atlanta and was going to be giving a workshop. It turned out that she told her mom about it, and her mom burst into tears. And she's like, "What, mom?" She's like, "Sam Christensen, is that the one who was from ba 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 ba?" They had lost touch. They had been best friends in college.
no, isn't that beautiful?
Is it? And she didn't say anything during the entire workshop, but she told him at the end. And she said this word they used to call each other something, I don't remember what it was, but she said it and he was like, and she was like, "I'm so and so's daughter." And then he burst into tears. So I mean, so sweet, but the world is small, and I think
Very.
people forget how much more we have in common than what separates us. And they let the things that they think are separating us be the thing that literally separates us, like that keeps them from making the connection.
So another thing, like during this interview, you've now mentioned Tom Vaughn. So I could clip out that part and send it to him. And it's another touch point of like, hey, I was thinking of you. And like you just mentioned, Sam Christensen, he's passed away, but Get Taped. I could look into Get Taped and clip that part out and be like, hey, look, you were shouted out in this episode. So that is how
Brilliant.
I think. And I do that
Yeah.
all day long. Like, if I'm ever on a podcast and it makes me think of someone, I will clip out that piece and send it to them.
So okay, let's get into this because I want to know about this. So was this something that you trained yourself to do, or were you doing like this in high school as well? Like you'd meet
No,
someone.
that's training. I see things that other people do well, like I just mentioned with that name tag earlier, how it said, "Ask me about pro wrestling," and I'm like, "Genius, noted, I'm using that."
Yes. Yeah, for
And I'll
sure.
test it. And it's
Yeah.
funny because I put on my first meetup. I love to attend meetups. I attended Tom Vaughn's meetup. It was a 2-hour cocktail party. We shared a love of a book that Nick Gray wrote called 2-Hour
Yes, I
Cocktail
know. He
Party.
told me about that on the podcast.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I ended up interviewing Nick Gray and Tom Vaughn after that party that I attended. And
Wow.
Nick had pitched my podcast before I moved to Texas, and I just followed him on social because he pitched me. I was like, "Hey, I'll read the book." Loved the book. And then once I experienced the party, I was like, "I wanna do that too." So I ended up putting on a party, finding a sponsor, And then all these other meetups that I had met a couple cool people from each meetup, I told each one of those people to bring a friend, and it was a hit.
So talk to me about that, because I think that that is honestly something that anybody could do in any industry.
Totally.
Yeah.
So here's what I did. I started attending Tom Vaughn, he is a I think he's a professor at the University of
Yeah.
Houston. He teaches
Yeah.
screenwriting. He was putting on a meetup, a 2-hour cocktail party, and it was very structured party. I loved it. 2-hour party. He invited creatives, podcasters, actors, anyone, in the film industry. I went to that, met a couple cool people, connected with them on Instagram, wherever they are, LinkedIn, wherever they wanted to connect with me. And I then did a post about the event and tagged all the people that I met. And here's another tip too. If I meet somebody at Gas Tech or OTC or Tom Vaughn's event, I will message them immediately. I'll send them a picture. Hey, met you at Gas Tech, met you at OTC. That way I have like a digital footprint of how we connected, what we spoke about. If there's anything about that person that I remember that I want to remember in the future, I'll be like, oh my God, I love that story about Michael Jackson. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you reference it so that you have that in the digital footprint. That's so smart.
Exactly.
That is so smart. I love that. So what I always say is like, have that conversation. Like if we were having a conversation and then, we had our time and you'd go your way, I go, I'd be in the bathroom with my notes. Like,
Oh, I'm
Rena
I'm
said this.
constantly taking notes. I do it at every conference. Even my co-host was
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god." He was like,
Yeah.
"I need you." He's like, "I
But
don't
it's
remember
it's
anyone's
true.
name."
And exactly, how are you supposed to? And I know I'm bad at that. So beyond even knowing their name, it's like I know you have 4 kids, right? I know that and it's just because I've written these things down because they're important. They're touch points. You're a mom, I'm a mom. I mean, I'm always looking for the touch points. And I know you do this as well. But I think you go beyond it because I think you're more extroverted than I am. So you don't necessarily need the touch points. You're like you go straight in with the icebreakers. So do you have any good icebreakers that you
Yeah,
use?
so for my first party, I really wanted it to kinda be a mix of the 2-hour cocktail party idea and kind of like my own vibe. So my icebreaker question, I do think something that anybody can answer is a good icebreaker. So like, "What did you have for breakfast?" is a really easy one. So I did start with that, and then I was like, "Hey, do you have a podcast? Have you ever guested on a podcast, or would you like to start one?" I did that as a
Mm,
question.
wow. Okay. And I bet that there were a lot of people that answered yes to all three, right?
Yes, people
I mean,
had
podcasting is
multiple.
yeah, yeah.
And I got Riverside to sponsor. Actually, they are the one that gave me the idea of doing a meetup. Yeah.
Really?
Yes,
So tell me about that.
they I had
So
seen a
wait, maybe
post.
before we get into Riverside is a virtual studio that you can use to podcast with and invite guests on and record it in 4K and really high quality audio. Okay.
Yes, Riverside is a recording platform essentially. So
Yeah.
instead of Zoom or Squadcast,
Just
it's
gives you
it's
much better quality.
it's
Yeah.
a higher
And
quality recording. It
yeah.
makes you sound like you're in a studio, like a recording studio.
Yeah.
So I saw on LinkedIn like to partner with creators to bring podcasters together. It's a really great way for them to get feedback. Like I mentioned earlier with the Headliner app that I love, it's a great way to get feedback, invite people that are currently podcasters, invite people that want to try being a podcaster, right? And so I had one guy in the room that ended up coming. This is a crazy story. We had connected on LinkedIn. He was in Houston. I noticed that. He was a podcaster. He has his own branding agency. And I said, "Hey, where's the best mojito spot in Houston?" Because I was moving there and I love a good frozen
Yeah.
mojito.
Yeah.
So he told me a place called Bohem. I'll shout them out. And me and my husband went there. We met actually a podcast guest that had been on my show. Um, we met them. I loved the drinks. And you remember that because it's like the first place that you get a good frozen mojito. And so I reached out to the bar and I said, "Hey, this was the very first bar that I went to when I moved to Houston, and I'm thinking about doing a meetup. Do you guys allow that?" And I said, "Hey, I will market your place. I'll shout you out. I have a sponsor. They're willing to pick up the first round of drinks. Would you discount the drinks? Do you want to throw in a round of drinks
Amazing.
too?"
I love it.
I said, "Yeah,
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on that?" And I just want to say you're the first place I'm reaching out to. I had a really positive experience. Somebody recommended you guys. Who doesn't want to hear all those things?
absolutely. Honest flattery will get you so much. It really
So
will.
much.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's so smart though on so many levels.
So it totally worked. I didn't have to pay to use the venue. They gave me a special room. They discounted the drinks. And then Riverside had a very small bill. And I got 30 plus people to their venue. I had a photographer that I had met at a meetup that was trying to get more clients. I was like, "You take pictures and you take good video, I'll shout you out and you'll get clients from coming to this." And he networked with the guy that told me about the bar and they ended up exchanging information.
So
It's a
smart.
win-win all around.
Yeah,
And I even got
absolutely.
somebody to sign up for Riverside that week, which covered the whole event that they invested in.
Oh, wow. Amazing. So I love that. So this was when you were new to Texas, right?
Yeah.
And so you were, and you just literally used what the Meetup website is what you're talking about.
Actually, Riverside was very cool. They sent it out to their email list. They were like, "Hey, any podcasters in Houston or the Texas area? There's a podcaster locally that's putting on a podcaster meetup." They helped me with the branding, they helped me with the messaging. They sent me everything I needed to promote it on my end. They made it very easy, and I let them be in charge of everybody that signed up getting their email list. Yep. They shared
Wow.
it with
Okay,
me
so
and I
that
shared it
was
with them.
lovely. Yeah. Because one thing that I always recommend, so I think for actors, yeah, I think that there are ways to do it, right? To I don't know about putting a shout out on Meetup, right? Because you'll end up with a lot of wannabe actors, which is nothing bad, but it's not necessarily what actors like who consider it their profession. They don't necessarily, what do they get from it, right? So, but I love the idea of hosting like a meetup, and saying if you could find a sponsor. So I have no idea what actors could use as a sponsor, but even that, just saying we're going to come, and everybody will order one drink, whatever it is, and
I go to plenty of events where people are willing to buy their own coffee or their own drink. I just thought,
yeah.
"Hey, if there's one free drink, more people will come."
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, it makes it especially like broke
And
actors.
I gave the pictures to Riverside, I gave the pictures to the venue, I gave the video to Riverside, so they got branding material, I got branding
Amazing.
material, the photographer got branding material,
Yeah.
and I just went
Yeah.
around and I was like, "Hey, if you're a Riverside user, tell them what you like, tell them what they could improve. If you're not a Riverside user, just say thank you for sponsoring tonight where the podcasters can all meet each other because that is a very
Yeah.
cool thing for you to do in our community."
Absolutely, and I love that you even gave them like a prompt. Like, like if it's not this, then say that. And but it's so true and that makes such a difference. Do you have like a system for keeping your contacts warm or do you just kind of go by whoever pops into your mind?
Yeah, as a mom of 4, I am very busy, so it is much more of, taking care of paid clients first and, opportunities and then what comes my way. I try to knock things out and not second guess myself because I don't have time for second guessing myself. So if I have an idea, I just make an intro. And I also say to
Okay.
people like, "Look, I know you're busy and I just wanted to make this intro, no pressure."
Yeah. 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 And I mean, it's so
You
helpful,
came
and
to
I'm
mind,
sure.
wanted to let you know I was thinking of you. If you can't get to it, no hard feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's also just another touch point,
Exactly,
Yeah, it's a way
exactly.
to not let the relationship go cold. As I've definitely been guilty of that, letting relationships go cold. You kind of lose the reason to keep in contact with someone. And even though they may pop into my head, instead of just, you know, writing, hey, you just popped into my head. How are you doing? Right? Because it could be as simple as a text. It doesn't have to be a conversation.
If you have a good connection with somebody, spend less than 30 minutes a day and go back, literally leave somebody a voice note. I love voice notes from people. I will
Mm,
sometimes just voice note somebody and be like, "I just wanna let you know, like, I was thinking of you. It's been a freaking long week. I hope you had a good
yeah.
one. Give me an
Yeah.
update."
Yeah, I love that. I love that because it does,
I'm
it keeps
grateful
the
for you.
relationship warm. Yes, that's such a big one. And there are so many touch points as we move through our lives, right? We're working with other actors, we're working with directors, with casting, all sorts of things. And people do pop into your mind, right? For whatever reason. And just to reach out and not be asking for something so that
That is
you're,
such a huge, huge point. Here's
yeah.
another example. So there's a guy, Adrian Leal. I just had him on my Better Call Daddy podcast. I ran into this guy at multiple events. So there's an event here in Houston called Cup of Joey. That's the one I
Mm,
mentioned that's like lead with your purpose. So they do
mm.
purpose tags instead of name tags. So you lead with your why. I was like, well, my dad knows his why. He always tells me he's living for the generation before him and the generation after him. So I started adopting that why because it's hard to kind of come up with your why. Like, what gets you out of
Yeah,
bed
I
in the
was just
morning,
trying to think that while you were saying that to
right?
me.
Like,
Yeah,
what lights you up?
yeah,
That's another way of
yeah,
saying it, kind of like your
yeah.
what lights you up. What are you excited about? That kind of thing. But I'm like, my dad is so legacy minded. So I've kind of adopted his. I'm like, your legacy can be tied to somebody else's legacy. If they have a better idea about what legacy is, just take a little piece of that.
Right.
Uh, So
Yeah.
I started going to these Cup of Joey events. They have them at different like shared workspaces across Houston. They have them in all different neighborhoods. Houston is very spread out. And if you go to different ones, you get totally different vibes at each one.
Yeah, I bet.
And my very first event that I went to, I swear to God, like if you register, you get entered to win Houston Rocket tickets. I freaking won the first Cup of Joey. So
Amazing. Beginner's
yeah,
luck.
yeah, beginner's luck. Yeah. And you're like, I have a total positive association with your events now. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yes, exactly. I'm the
So
one who won.
I reached out because my son is a huge fan of the Houston Rockets, and we're actually going to a game this coming week. And I said, "Are you doing any more Houston Rocket tickets at any of your events? You know, because I'll come to that one if you are to try to win, you know." Um, and the guy said, "We don't have any coming up anytime soon, but here's my contact at the Houston Rockets. Since you're now working for the OGGN network, maybe they'd like to do an event with the Rockets. And would
What?
your boss like to interview the owner of the Houston Rockets?" And tagged the guy. I was like, "Yes, he would. And yes, we
I'm
would.
answering for him.
And I will get back to you immediately."
Yes. Amazing. Oh my god, I bet your boss was ecstatic.
I got immediately on the phone with him right before this, and I was like, I know you've been wanting to partner with Cup of Joey.
Yes, exactly. Just say yes.
How would you like to interview the owner of the Houston Rockets? And I would like to be the one filming that." And he was like, "That sounds amazing. And yes, I would like to do that."
I love it. I love it. So it's just really keeping, not being afraid to ask is what I'm hearing.
Oh,
Not
for
be afraid to,
sure.
right? So if there's something you want, say it with a wink and a nod, but say it, right? And then the worst they can
Yes.
do is say no, but it may spark something as it did with that,
You
right?
know what? Your wink and a nod thing, I want to add to that because yes, you got to ask for it, but you also, there's a little negotiation there, right? You can't seem like
Mm,
you need it.
right. Yeah.
You're like, I might entertain that, or I have some other things going on, but I really would like to partner with you.
Yes. Yeah, that's like how I tell my actors to have, agent interviews, that
It's like when you're
I mean,
buying a house. Like, I really love your house,
yeah.
but I'm looking at other ones too. So
Yes.
here's my
Yeah,
best offer, take it or leave it. And there's no
yeah.
negotiation past that point.
But
I'm
I
willing to
think
walk.
I love that. I love that. But it does take some chutzpah to do
Oh,
that,
grow a pair. Grow
Yeah.
a pair. Yes.
Yeah.
Not many
And
people are willing to ask and to let you know they're willing to walk.
yes. Yes, absolutely. But I think just even the asking, so many people are so uncomfortable with
You
that.
gotta do it. If you wanna if you want opportunities in life,
You
rejection is a
have to be.
big part of it.
Absolutely. Now did you
Actually,
do
if you aim for rejection and get comfortable with rejection, you're gonna get a lot more opportunities.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so I was just gonna ask you if you had done anything to, like, get yourself immune to rejection. So tell me about that aiming for rejection. What does that even look
I
like?
would have never gotten Jerry Springer if I hadn't already experienced rejection multiple times.
Okay, so you're like,
Like,
"So what do I
I
have to
auditioned
lose?"
for a youth performing arts school and did not get in on my first try, and my dad was like, "Oh, wait, what does she have to do to get in? Like, how does she get another audition?" She wants
Yeah,
to go there.
yeah.
And so I had to study with the music teacher that a lot of the kids had already worked with that went to that school. I studied with that music teacher for 4 years. I would have never
Wow.
made it through that program if she wasn't working with me. I
Mm.
had to swallow my pride and walk back in there after I knew everybody else that went to that school probably got in on their first try. And I also worked at a college radio station and thought I was big enough for the big times. I freaking applied to WGN and they were like, "You're good, but we don't have an opening." And then I saw that Jerry Springer was looking for an intern, and I walked my happy ass over to NBC Tower and told them I had an interview.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And this was before they would, like, have everything on the computer and all that, but
exactly. You just befriend the
still.
security guards. I mean, how many times have you worked your way
Yes!
into a freaking event that was sold out because you got cash in your pocket or because you're cute?
Yeah, or just friendly, right? Just
Or
saying some
friendly. I went
nice
to a comedy
things.
event a couple weeks
Yeah.
ago with my husband, and we did not get tickets, and it was sold out, and I was like, "Can I pay you cash to stand in the back?" And then his boss, like, kinda saw me doing that and, made me pay a little bit more than that guy was gonna charge me, but we got in.
Yeah, there you go. I do think that there is something just to asking. And this
Yes.
is something that not just actors, but I think especially women are afraid to
Oh,
do.
women have the upper hand.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Also because it's unexpected, because most women are afraid to be assertive in that way, like to ask for the deal. Like what,
100%. I have
you know?
learned how to negotiate from my dad.
Really?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. And you know what? If you Yeah. What was I gonna say about that? He basically told me, like, "I did not work so hard my whole life for you to be a freaking doormat.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah.
So know that, these people can't kill you, they can't hurt you. Freaking try."
The worst they can do is say no. That's what my dad always
Yes,
used to say.
literally
That's the
that.
worst that can happen.
Go for
Yeah.
what you want. Life is short, man. If you have an
Ah, so true.
idea, just try it. It was funny, even with this job with OGGN, I was working one of his events and he said to me, "Hey, do you know anybody that would like want to be a host for one of my shows?" I was like, "Mark, me."
There you go. Yeah. Yeah,
And he was like, "You don't have
absolutely.
time for that." I was like, "I'll make time for it. Yeah, like I do have clients, but I'll take less clients." This is exactly what I said. I was like, "I will take less opportunities because I see more opportunity with you."
Ooh.
Make
And that's
somebody feel like an A
flattery and
player.
exactly, exactly. So here's one for you, and it sounds transactional, so sorry about that, but it because it does. But there are some people, well, like you just said, there was more opportunity with him than there was with some other people. So how do you determine, like, who is worth putting in a lot of energy into?
Ooh,
That's a tough
that
one,
is
right?
such a good question. Because look, you wanna be able to help everyone. You
Yeah.
gotta get really, like, clear on
Mm,
exactly your avatar of who you wanna work with and what you wanna do, and you will
yeah.
only get clear by testing the waters. Like, I personally know I don't wanna be a script supervisor. I also don't wanna be an editor. Like, there are parts of production that I like more. I really love interviewing people more than I love cutting it together, but I'm really good
Mm,
at supervising somebody cutting it together, and if I had to cut it together, I could.
yes. Okay. So just knowing what you want. And this kind of goes in line with, I always, with my clients, I'm telling, if you know your brand as an actor, right? If you know
Yeah.
what it is that you want to be known for, that's going to act like your North Star and give
Yeah.
you direction as far as who you want to be networking with.
Even with my Better Call Daddy show, like, I get pitched a lot, and I'm like, "Are you comfortable talking about your relationship with your dad?" If they say no, then I'm like, you know,
We're
"Maybe I
done.
can help you find another show."
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, like, you even said earlier in the interview, if you wanted to do a meetup, you would really want it to be for working actors, not people that are, like, thinking, "Hey, I might like to try." Right?
Yeah.
So, your branding needs to really say that,
Yeah.
because the more you really spell out exactly who you want to work with and the opportunities that you wanna have, the more clear you get on saying that message, those opportunities come. I wanted to be a producer, not an editor, and
Yeah.
that's the job I just got.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. You definitely have to put it out there, let people know what it is you want. So
And who you
what
wanna
would you
connect with.
so what do you tell your kids? Do you like give your seriously, what do you like give your kids networking tips? Because networking, it's a skill, but it is also a talent. You have this as a natural talent, but as you were saying, it's also a skill you've developed. So is there anything that you say to them? Or do
That's
you are
it's
you
so interesting because we talked about that in your episode, like, right. Like, d are your kids interested in the industry? I try to, you know, show my kids that I'm trying radio and take my kids to meetups with me. Even I told my daughter, I was like, "Hey, I might go to Milan, I might go to Japan for these trade shows." She was like, "I wanna do that." So it's like, be open to, I wonder if I could take her there." Like, there's some
No,
things
no,
that I
no, I
do.
mean, do you tell your kids, like do you give your kids any networking tips for them?
So that honestly would be networking. She would be seeing me in action. I've taken my daughter to
Ah,
events where I've
yes.
spoken. I've taken my
Yeah,
daughters to podcaster meetups. I've taken my daughter to, like, women's events in cities in Chicago where we lived, where there were powerful women speaking and putting on events. I wanted her to see that. I wanted her
yeah,
to see that those are my people and how I network and all of those things. Yeah, but
yeah,
you know, there are things that you do that your kids are interested in and that, they might have natural abilities in, and then there's some things that they're totally uninterested in. So,
yeah.
I try to teach my kids, like, through the things that, I tell them that I'm doing
By
and that they know a spark in.
yes, yeah,
Like,
that
even
makes
my
sense.
son, I told him kind of some of the duties of my new role, and he was like, "I think I could do that." I was like, "Well, I'm
Mm.
happy to show you what I'm doing to see if maybe you could do some of that."
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No, I was just wondering if there was, like, any networking tips that were like, even a
For
five-year-old could
kids,
do
like
that.
networking
Well
for
well,
kids.
no, but, like, even a 5 I don't this is not a podcast for kids, I'm not asking
Yeah.
for kids. I'm asking for something super easy, like, for some ways because, again, people really have a lot of hesitation about networking because they feel it's transactional. So what I've gotten from our conversation is try
Yeah.
and lead with value. Try
Yes.
and make a note, like give yourself like let yourself make a note about people so that you can look at that and say, do I know anybody? Right? Do I know anybody that XYZ or who do I know? So that you're always making yourself valuable with that connection. Like I'm sure that photographer is eternally grateful. I'm sure for hooking him up with so many different podcasters. Even if you only got one or two clients from that, that's a lot,
I'm literally
from
gonna message him right after this and tell him, "Hey, I was on Act Bold with Ann Cedar Alexander
And Alexander
today,
Cedar. Yeah.
Alexander
Yeah.
Cedar, and you should listen to the episode because we talked about you, and what are
Yeah.
you up to?"
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love that. Just even like that's a great tip right there. So when someone's name comes up in a good way in
Yep,
conversation, obviously a good way, like just to turn around and let them know, hey, your name came up and this is why. How are you? What are you up to? Because I always think that throwing the ball back in their court, like just giving them that thing, right? So that
yep.
if they have time, it's a quick question. You can either answer that in depth, that can be as short or as long as they would like it to be, but you're giving them the grace to decide that.
And I can reach out to not only the photographer, but Riverside.fm and Headliner app and Tom Vaughn,
Yeah.
all of the people that we talked about and used it as an example, just a touch point
I
to.
would love to know how you use that as an example. So you would literally just take a sound bite and send that to them or what?
Or I could clip it out from the YouTube.
Mm.
When I'm listening back to the full segment, I could literally drag and drop the YouTube full video into video.ai with the time code and send a clip to each one of those people. Hey, here's something that you can use for social media. I was talking about you in a good way.
Wow, amazing. That is an excellent tip. So, like, it's not just like I was talking about you. It's like, here's
Yeah.
how you can use it, right?
You could
Because
even give them something to say. Here's some copy you might wanna tweak.
yeah, actually. Yeah, no, I love that. That's brilliant. And that's something that definitely comes up, right, with other actors talking about, oh, I just worked with so and so, or I just worked with this casting director. She was amazing, or I just worked with that director. And just to say, hey, I love that. Like, clip that out, send it to them, and say, we were thinking about you and we said some nice things. Maybe you want to post it on social media. That
I've
is like
even
a
interviewed
gift.
people and I'm like, "Who is somebody that you would love to interview?" And then they get super excited about
Yeah.
why, and then I'm like, "I'm gonna send them that clip and tag them. I don't know if it'll work,
Yeah.
but let's try."
Yeah. Love that. That is such good advice. Rena, you have said so much gold. I hope that I've been able to distill it in a way that people have some
Yes.
actionable things that they can pull out of this. So I have one last question for you. The name of the podcast is Act Bold. You are a bold woman. What is one bold thing, one time that you really stepped outside of your comfort zone and did something bold? And what was it? Why did you do it? And what happened?
Oh man, so many, but I think the first one that comes to mind, and this was a big story for me, was like going to Tony Robbins and putting my hand through a board that looked so thick. And I really was like doubting myself. I had never karate chopped any wood before. I didn't have any formal training on doing that. I was like, am I strong enough? Am I, then you start questioning yourself, like, am I confident enough? But then, like, seeing other people around me that freaking did not question themselves and they just freaking gave it one good all in. I was like, I'm as strong as them. I'm as fit as them. I could give it one good go. It
Yeah.
awoke something in me
Oh,
doing
wow.
that. I screamed so guttural after that, it was crazy. I was like, "Wow, if you just listen to the people before you that have done it and you do the same movement or the same hip thrust or the same hand placement, if you listen to what a coach tells you to do and you don't question and they're like, "This'll work if you do it." And it
Yes.
seems like a breakthrough opportunity, give
Yeah.
it one good all in
Yeah.
before you doubt yourself. Just see your hand going through it. Because if you stop at the block, you will not get through.
I love that. It's so, so true just for life in general. Just
Yes.
just try it. What have you got to lose, you know? And
But
then when you've
commit.
done it, you know you can do it, right?
Commit.
Yes.
Like decide my hand is going through that block and nothing is going to stop it.
So, and I have to take that back to an actor's career, right? Because so many actors, I was just having a conversation with Valerie Hubbard today. She does the Actors Fast Track. She's very cool woman. This is the first time we've actually ever spoken. But she was saying, like, if I told you that there was $1 million buried in your house somewhere, you would rip out the fucking floor to find it. You would do everything and you'd be pulling down walls. You would find that $1 million. But if I told you that your acting career was in the walls somewhere, you'd be like, yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it
Ooh,
is, maybe it's not.
yes.
And I just thought, man, she just hit that. And I'm going to clip this out and send it to Valerie.
Heck yes. She'll
Yeah,
love
but it
it.
was, yeah,
Hi,
so
Valerie.
good. Yeah, so cool. But it's so true. And it is that thing. It's like, do you want it? And are you willing to commit? Are you willing to do the scary thing? Are you willing to do the thing you don't think you can do and do it with all of your heart?
All of your heart, all of your gusto. It's so funny too. Like I took some Second City comedy classes with my husband for date night, and the one of my biggest takeaways was like, if you believe it, other people will believe it too. And
For sure.
you know
Yeah.
what? You see politicians, man, they're saying
Oh, let's
lies
not
all
even
day
get
long,
into
and
that.
people believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If you
Absolutely.
believe it with full on conviction, you would be surprised other people will buy that too.
Yeah. 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 For sure. Yeah. People can even convince themselves. We'll get into the politicians another time. But yeah. Reena, this has been such a pleasure. Is there anything that you want to leave the actors with? I definitely will tell them to check out your podcast, Better Ask Daddy, right?
Better
No,
Call
is it
Daddy, yeah.
Better Call Daddy? Right. Not call her daddy. Better call
Anything with
daddy.
daddy is a sure win, yeah. If
Yeah,
you know an
exactly.
inspirational dad, a daddy's girl, anybody with some daddy drama, send them my way.
Yeah, cool. Well, hey, you heard it. Rena is always seriously looking to interview people on her podcast. If you've got an interesting story about your daddy, pitch her. You got
Yes.
nothing to lose. You heard it here first.
BetterCallDaddy.com, and I'm Reena Friedman Watts on all social.
Perfect. Love it. All right, people, take it, run with it, commit to it, give it your gusto, give it your all. And until next time, you stay your bold and beautiful self. Bye bye.